Hello and welcome to this webinar where Paul, Catherine and Amanda from the pre-employment team are exploring the assessment arrangements for functional skills in 2021.
Firstly, it's important to be clear from the outset that the arrangements in place for this year are very different from those that operated last summer. You may recall that all normal assessments and exams for functional skills, ESOL and various other qualifications were halted for several months last year, with all the candidates due to complete during that period instead receiving a calculated result. There's no wholesale cancellation of the exams this year, other than for some specific types of qualification, such as GCSE. And within the arena of vocational and technical qualifications, there is much more of a mixed picture.
So the VCRF, the new temporary regulatory framework that underpins these arrangements, has placed qualifications into different categories according to their purpose. For comparison, GCSE and GCE are also included on this slide in purple, although the only Sitting Guilds qualification that fits in that box is the extended project. Within the VCRF, there are three main categories. B1 includes qualifications that are considered similar in structure to GCSE and A-levels. For example, they might have fixed date exams and they might be typically delivered over a whole academic year. It includes our technicals along with other things like level 3 core maths. There's then category A, which broadly includes occupational and licence to practice qualifications, and where there's often not much scope to change the assessment approach without undermining its whole purpose. Functional skills sits within a third category known as B2. These tend to be qualifications with a more flexible assessment model than GCSE, for example, where it's generally available on demand and year round rather than there just being one or two assessment opportunities in each academic year. Functional skills is one of a number of qualifications in that category alongside ESOL and some vocationally related qualifications. The presumption behind B2 is that normality should be preserved as far as possible, but that there might need to be alternatives made available for particular learners and circumstances.
Ofqual has published an infographic, there's a link to it on this slide, which helps to explain a little bit more about the three categories and the assumptions behind them. It's framed in such a way that it can be shared with learners. So let's look a little more at these arrangements as they apply to functional skills. As we indicated, these qualifications fall within the category B2. The default position is that normal assessment arrangements should remain available and should be the preferred means by which candidates achieve these qualifications. All of our live assessments remain available, with entry-level assessments being available to download as usual from the 3748 and 4748 qualification documents page. And reading, writing and mathematics exams at level 1 and 2 are also available to book and take, both on paper and on screen. There might be a need to make use of the adaptations that have been put in place for this year. For example, the potential for candidates to complete assessments remotely. So each of these options should also be explored carefully. Only then, and also if there's a time-critical need to complete rather than delay until normal assessments become available again, can the alternative known as teacher assessed grades or tags be considered.
So the position is that as far as possible, everyone is to do the test. Booking and delivery of paper-based and on-screen assessment are still available as normal. We have taken some steps to address some of the challenges around accommodating and scheduling exams, so do make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of the ICE, the instructions for conducting exams document, which is available from the 4748 qualification page. In addition, we've updated the guidance on adaptations document, and the latest version of this will be available, remains available from the COVID-19 web pages. We may well be making further changes to that guidance document as the situation unfolds. So do make sure you keep an eye on the website and ensure that you're working from the most recent version of that document. We still have our testing centres, so if your learners can get to one of the designated venues, there have been venues in London, but also Birmingham and Bristol that can accommodate the functional skills exams in this way. Alternatively, there is also some guidance to support employers in delivering functional skills exams in workplaces. Not necessarily down to us, but one of the things to also be aware of for context is that the government's exam support service has been set up and exists to support with some of the additional costs that might be associated with delivering functional skills exams in the current circumstances. There's a link to the DFE guidance and information about that on this slide.
We have also introduced arrangements which allow speaking, listening and communicating assessments which are assessed by the teacher or tutor to be conducted remotely, and this will form part of the assessment toolkit for the reformed functional skills qualifications as we move forward. While live testing continues to be available, we recognise that testing in person sometimes isn't possible, and we have our interim remote invigilation solution, Test at Home, for reading, writing and maths exams at level 1 and 2. We are updating the adaptations guidance, and you'll find some new guidance for delivering entry-level assessments there.
The DFE and ESFA have updated their guidance on providing apprenticeships during the pandemic. There are two areas of temporary flexibility for apprentices. Firstly, eligible apprentices can start their endpoint assessment, or EPA, before they achieve their functional skills qualifications, provided that the reason they have been unable to access functional skills assessments is due to the COVID-19 restrictions. Secondly, the requirement for Level 2 apprentices to attempt their Level 2 functional skills qualifications has been waived until the 31st of July 2021. Apprentices will still need to meet the Maths and English requirements at Level 1 in order to achieve their apprenticeship, but will not need to attempt the Level 2 test. It is important to read the DFE/ESFA guidance carefully, so we've included a link here on this slide.
The teacher assessed grades are really not the same as the process that we saw last year, as last year all exams were cancelled and centres were asked to predict what results would have been if they had gone ahead. However, TAG is based on evidence of the learner's ability to pass the assessment now, and you'll see the term assessment ready in the guidance document. Any tags will reflect your confidence that the learner in question would have passed if they had sat their assessment today. TAG will not be available for everyone, and we've outlined the various ways in which normal testing can be delivered. TAG is, however, a fallback option for a limited range of specific circumstances where individual learners cannot access a live assessment.
To support you with the process of determining which learners will be eligible for a tag, including the sources of evidence that can potentially be used to support a tag judgment, we have a guidance document for functional skills. This is the one with the blue cover. The advice and guidance around adaptations to functional skills assessments is set out in the adaptations guidance document, which has a green cover. The Functional Skills COVID-19 pages are a repository for a number of supporting documents, including a timeline for the process between now and the end of August 2021.
Teacher assessed grade, or tags, are available for functional skills as a last resort, where a centre can demonstrate for individual learners who are assessment ready that it is not possible to delay the assessment, it is not possible to deliver assessment face-to-face, and it is not possible to deliver assessment remotely. Centres should refer to the DFE guidance, which outlines how to run assessments in line with Public Health England guidance.
To help you a little more in working through where and how TAG could be applied, This decision-making tree has been included in the TAG guidance as an appendix. It walks you through that kind of start to finish process, from evaluating whether the learner is registered in the first place for the qualifications, but also the range of circumstances that might determine whether a normal assessment could take place, or indeed whether the learner is ready for assessment, or as a last resort, whether the TAG process could be a possible way forward.
So the first step is to identify which of your learners will be eligible for a tag. This handy bullet point list sets out all the conditions which need to apply in order for the learner to be considered eligible. Be registered onto a functional skills qualification with City and Guilds. Be assessment ready. Be unable to access assessment face-to-face. Be unable to access assessment remotely. Be unable to delay the assessment as a result is required for progression, and any delay will impact a learner's ability to progress, and the centre must have evidence that a tutor can use to form the basis of their TAG judgment. These are set out in the blue TAG guidance document.
We are aware that there are some learners whose functional skills assessment is overdue by virtue of their course having ended between August 2020 and March 21. They will be considered eligible for a tag provided that the following conditions apply. 1. Their functional skills course end date is in the past and assessment is overdue. 2. They would have been considered eligible for a tag at the time they were ready to take a live assessment. 3. The centre has supporting evidence to demonstrate that the learner was assessment ready. 4. The centre can demonstrate that it's not possible to invite the learner back to take an assessment face-to-face, and they have explored all possible adaptations to test.
In contrast to last year's CAG process, where there was one single opportunity for submission, this year the TAG process has been developed to allow a number of submission windows for centres to apply the TAG process to their learners. That first window for centres to submit an eligibility booking will run from the 19th to the 23rd of April, although there are 2 further application opportunities that follow on from that period during the latter part of April, and also during May, June, and actually into early July. Once centres have completed step 1 and have identified the learners that they think are eligible for a tag, step 2 will then involve them submitting individual learners for consideration for eligibility through the walled garden, which has been updated, or rather will be updated, to show an eligibility booking tab. This submission will be reviewed by our quality team, and any actions or decisions will be seen against that submission. A guidance document covering this process will be uploaded to join the various other support materials on the Functional Skills COVID page.
Once all the relevant learners have been identified and submitted through walled garden, the centre must complete and submit an eligibility rationale, from which will support the quality team's decision-making progress. This form is available on the Functional Skills COVID-19 page of the website. This document is an overarching rationale document for the group of learners that you have submitted in walled garden, and the details you give in this form will be key to whether a tag will be allowed for individuals. So the more detailed information you can give, the better we can support you with your request, and it will reduce the possibility that we need to come back to you for more information.
In order to make tag judgments, centres will need to collect evidence for each learner to support their decisions. We have not mandated the type of evidence that must be used, but we do give guidance about the types of evidence that might be considered. For example, completed sample papers, or any formative or practice exams and assessment results, or perhaps coursework or homework, or even evidence gathered from the workplace, or relevant evidence gathered to support the attainment against other qualifications. even records of learner performance over the course of study. It is most important that the centre is confident that the evidence is authentic and is current, and that it is available for quality assurance purposes.
Following on from that point, centres will also need to have a clear internal quality assurance IQA process, which should cover clarifying that all of the staff involved in the tag process have a common understanding of the functional skills subject content and the standard of the pass grades as set out in the past descriptors, that they're able to support consistent and valid decisions, and centres will, in the course of doing so, need to carry out some standardisation activity to ensure the validity of the evidence that's being considered to support tag judgments. In the course of reviewing that evidence, obviously it's crucial that the authenticity of learners' work is established and that centres are indeed confident that this is the case. Also important, just as a sense check, to understand where the data being considered here, how it might differ from previous years, to get a feel for performance levels. And it's also important that there is a robust sign-off process, that all tag grades are reviewed and ultimately signed off by the head of centre as part of this submission process. We will, when we receive that information from centres, we will review the internal quality assurance process as part of that overarching quality assurance monitoring.
Once the quality team have confirmed that learners are eligible for a tag submission, these decisions will need to be added to walled garden. Again, we have a number of windows for these submissions, which follow on from the eligibility application process. Just to note, you will not be submitting the evidence to Sitting Girls. It needs to be retained in the centre so that it is available for review by the quality and assessment teams on request.
As the eligibility and tag submissions took place in Windows, likewise the results will be released in Windows in line with the table shown here. On this slide, we've put all three windows together so you can see the timelines as they flow. As you can see, the second and third eligibility windows open as the previous one closes.
We have given you quite a lot of information here, and there are plenty of guidance documents for you to get your teeth into. But if you do have any questions about the tag process, please get in touch with the quality delivery team. You can use the email address fs.quality@sittinggirls.com to contact them. For more general inquiries, you can also go through to the customer services team, and you can see the contact details on this slide. Please do be aware, if you haven't already picked up on this, that their phone number has changed recently. It is now 01924 930 800.
We will be using the questions asked in the live webinar to compile a set of FAQs, which will be made available on the Functional Skills COVID-19 page. Thank you for joining us for this recording. We hope you found it useful.